What's up, associates? Welcome back to the Anime Association, and I am your host, Kyo Tim. And today I am joined with Anime Addict 1999. Today we will be talking about One Piece episode 1127. I feel like I need to drink some water after saying that one, but before we get into that, go on ahead and smack the subscribe button and ring that notification bell so you can stay up to date with all things anime. Not only is it free, but it helps us out just as much. So let's just get straight into it. The episode picks up right where the last one left off. We start getting the Gear 5 Luffy versus Kizaru fight. And I don't know about you, but every time Gear 5 is on the screen, it feels like a totally different shift in the series itself. My favorite part that I saw was him pretty much being a professional softball player with Kizaru, right? How'd you feel about that coming in there and then Brooke doing his usual jokes?
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed was Kizaru was like sweating, and it's not often you see a vice admiral sweat. Um,
He's an
you know,
admiral. He's not a vice admiral. He's a full admiral.
okay, admiral. But yeah, it's not often you see one of them sweat because of how powerful they are. And basically, with how like Luffy used to be, you would never guess that like he would be in this position to make an admiral sweat like he did. But what another thing that I noticed was also that he seemed unfazed almost, he had no reaction, and like Luffy throws him, he's just like floating in the air, kind of just going like, "Ooh,"
Yeah.
So I thought it was pretty cool to see basically like a complete 180 of like, oh, like he's sweating because he's like realizing Luffy is like another on another level now. But then he was like, okay, I can kind of handle this, and then we saw later on with some more that I guess we'll get into in a couple minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of like that too. How you can tell he's not visibly shook, but there's definitely that little hint drawn in there where he's definitely concerned that he just got yoked up by a big rubber man out of nowhere when he just threw him outside of the electric fence pretty much, right? And then we start getting into a bit where Vegapunk decides to leave the protection dome because he sees Bonnie on the camera. Now, from last episode, we didn't know what really happened to Bonnie, but we already knew if you hit that fence, pretty much the dome, that you have a big chance of dying. Now, we see Bonnie fighting and turning all the Navy into kids with her moves going in and out of adult and kid form. And then we also see that Sentamaru pretty much saved her. And I don't know if Sentamaru's dead or not, but that's kind of how it looked like. But then again, knowing One Piece, you never know if they're alive or dead. How would you feel about uh, that whole Bonnie sequence?
Yeah, I actually really appreciated that scene because we haven't really seen a whole lot of focus on Bonnie and her capabilities, and I love how she turned a bunch of them into kids and old men. And the part with Sentamaru, I thought he was dead when Kizaru attacked him, so I was
Mm-hmm.
shocked to see that he saved Bonnie, and I would say he's probably still alive, but I think it's just a matter of like when we're gonna see that, to find out if he really is alive or not. But yeah, the Bonnie scene I actually liked a lot. Um, it was really smart of her to like, go back and forth between adult and the kid, but that way she could like, because the one guy had her like in a full Nelson, and she turned
Yeah.
into a kid again to slip out. So I really like that scene with her.
Yeah, this whole episode is just fun to watch between Gear 5. It feels very I know it's an anime, but it feels very cartoonish, right? Like western cartoonish Looney Tune type of feel where you have going big, going small, back to big, turning them into kids and everything. And I know you don't read the manga, but seeing this animated was really a treat because you see a lot of more, moving parts and stuff. But right after this, we see Zoro versus Lucci, and we see Lucci is acting just like a leopard. He's going in and out of the bushes, and we see Zoro picking up on his own animal instinct by pretty much saying, "You stink as an animal." But we also get the comedic timing of Luffy floating in air, kicking his feet like, "You need some help," like that type of thing. How are you feeling about this Zoro versus Lucci fight, and how do you think it's going to end up progressing?
Yeah, I'm actually really excited to see how it's gonna go. Zoro's my favorite character, so anytime he's in a fight, my eyes light up and I'm glued to the screen. But yeah, like the animation went off there in that scene. Um, and I could kind of see this going to where Zoro will end up defeating Lucci. Um, and I would like to think that Luffy would defeat Kizaru. Um, but like I'm not sure in the manga like how far they are with that or not.
Uh, shoot, in the manga, we're past this at this point in time. Like, this was like probably like a year and a half ago that this stuff took place in the manga. But I'm not sure if you noticed it, but Lucci said something very interesting. He told Zoro, "You are strong enough to be the right hand man to a Yonko." Now, I'm not sure if you remember because it's probably been close to a year at this point in time, but he said at the beginning of the arc, "I refuse to acknowledge Straw Hat as a Yonko." So now he's calling Luffy a Yonko. What do you think was the shift in that mentality, and what do you think that means for Lucci and how he's now looking at the situation?
Yeah, it was definitely the fight between Luffy and Lucci that made Lucci realize how powerful Luffy is and that he really is a Yonko. And I think in terms of like like how much Lucci like what this means to him, I think that he has a lot more respect for Luffy and probably Zoro now than he did, especially when they fought. How many episodes? Like 700 episodes ago.
Yeah, it was, yeah, probably within the 200, 300 episode range. So it's probably been a good 15 plus years since they had their fight in real world time, right?
Yeah.
But I definitely think that fight was because he got stomped in that fight with Luffy's first fight in Gear 5 since Kaido. Now, bringing it back to Kizaru, because you brought it up, he was acting like he was going to fall into the water and like acting like he was, you couldn't really tell if he was being sarcastically concerning or if he was actually concerned. But then we see him do a move where he kind of, he's light, he bends the light and then he shoots himself back, but he comes back pretty much first episode Naruto Shadow Clone style, right? Just a whole bunch of them, and we're starting to get this real good fight and animation going on at this point in time, where it actually feels more of a fight for Luffy in Gear 5, even more so of a fight than it was against Kaido. How was there anything about the second part of the Kizaru fight that really stuck out to you?
Yeah, the shadow clone thing that he did. I'm assuming because of like the light particles with his devil fruit and stuff. That's how he's able to like make clones of himself. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it was just really cool to see that. And like been saying, the animation was absolutely crazy. Um, I love how they make it more of like an even fight between the two of them. Because not gonna lie, last week it seemed. I mean, Luffy was Gear 4, so it seemed like Kizaru, was basically one-sided and everything. But now that Luffy's Gear 5, things are a little bit more even, and I can appreciate the fight between them a lot more. Like, not saying I didn't in last week's episode, but in this week's episode was a lot better in my opinion.
Yeah, it feels really more like a fight for real. It doesn't feel like, it really feels like Luffy is putting the pressure on Kizaru at this point in time. Even though Kizaru has, that stoner Cheech and Chong type of like vibe going on where he doesn't express any emotion besides in his eyes like we saw in the last episode. But one of the parts of this that stuck out to me was Luffy tricking Kizaru by acting like he was running away just to get them lined up, and then him eating the light. That was a very Pac-Man like with how he ate the light, and then it went all over the place. Was him eating the light something that surprised you?
Yeah, and like also to see the way that it like moved throughout his body, and it seemingly appeared as if he shot laser beams like out of his eyes, and I really like that. One thing they do really well is like with Luffy's eyes when he's in Gear 5 is like the way that they like pop out. So I think
Yeah.
that like with the light, that was just like another layer to that.
Yeah, and then you seen who was it? Atlas and Sanji. Their eyes popped out of their head, and I think Frankie's too, right? All their eyes popped out of their head, seeing that, and it's one of them things because we know Paramecia awakenings affect everything around. And while at this point in time we know he's a zone, we know mythicals kind of have like different properties of things. Uh, that he's it's this isn't really a thing that we're seeing like as an illustration to make us laugh. Like he's actually affecting everything around him. That everything is Looney Tune or Tom and Jerry type right now. Now, before we move on, can we just praise the animation? Because the animation, art style, and direction that's going on, and the detail, especially during the not just this part, but the whole like Shadow Clone and then the Zoro and Lucci stuff, the detail and I don't. It's like the hyper realistic cartoon type of style. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but if you get what I'm saying, it's like it it feels more intense.
Yeah, and if I'm being completely honest, I wish that Toei would do this more so with Dragon Ball, because with all the breaks that they've been having with Dragon Ball, other than Daima, Dragon Ball would be the number one watched anime on Crunchyroll. Because like One Piece was for so long, but yeah, I can't. I don't think we can praise the animation enough. I think it's just some of the best animation that we have seen in a very long time.
Yeah, nah, you know, I you just made me sad bringing up Dragon Ball, man, and the long hiatus that we get, man. I just want to drop a tear about that right now. But there was something interesting that happened while Sanji was trying to get into the Vega Tank 8, and that was Vegapunk mentioned something about Bonnie being a kid. And he was like a kid, like almost like, what are you talking about? Now, do you think that Vegapunk is just saying like a kid because he's so old, or do you think there's something more to that's going on?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a thing where Sanji sees her as an actual kid, and then kind of takes back everything that he's been saying about her being beautiful and like all these different things, like all the things that Sanji says and does over women throughout the show. Um, he's automatically gonna be like, oh shoot, I gotta like I gotta like take a step back here.
I gotta chill out with this.
Yeah.
Now how the riding on clouds thing, I found that a very fun treat going into it, that they can ride on the clouds, like almost like they can travel anywhere. In the manga, it seemed like more so he was creating the clouds, riding on it, I believe. But in this one, it seemed like he was more so riding on top of the cloud that was being produced to hold up the big giant egg on there. Uh, Now, as we start wrapping up the episode, we get a zoom in on Saint Saturn. Chills when you think about that, because we have been waiting 20 plus years to see if they are going to do anything. Are we ever going to see them? How are you feeling right now, seeing, especially with the preview of the next episode and everything, that we're getting Saturn stepping in to do something possibly?
Yeah, I'm super excited to see him step in and like what exactly he's gonna do, if he's if he's gonna go after Luffy, or if he's going to go after Vegapunk. So I'm very excited, and if I'm being completely honest, I would love to see a fight um, involving him, and whether that's Luffy or Zoro, whoever it is. Um, I don't know, like the in terms of like power scaling and all that stuff, if like how much higher he is than Luffy and them. But I don't know. I'm very excited and very curious to see like how it's gonna go.
Yeah. So before we wrap it up, I want to take it back to the Lucci and Zoro fight for a second. Do you think Lucci is as strong as King? Like, or stronger or weak? Like, do you think this fight is going to be harder for Zoro than King was?
I would have to say yes because in a way, even though it was more so one sided, Lucci's fight with Luffy proved that he could like stand against Gear 5. Even though Luffy was in control for most of the fight, Lucci is still alive. So I think that with that, um, on in terms of him and King, I would say Lucci is probably stronger than King. So Zoro's fight with him is going to be a bigger test for him.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Just kind of a more natural progression, and I think this is the first time that we're seeing a Straw Hat other than Luffy. Well, obviously taking on somebody that Luffy fought. Well, I don't think we've seen that really happen before. Besides, Zoro fighting Kaido, but that was something completely different. Like this is a former antagonist taking on another Straw Hat. Now, just to wrap it up, do you have any predictions or theories going on that is happening within the next few episodes? Gathering all the information from the last 4 or 5 episodes that we've seen.
Yeah, I predict that Saturn's going to show up, obviously, and whoever he goes after, it's going to be trouble for them. Um, I know that we're getting Kuma's backstory in like 2 episodes, I think. So that's going to be super sad to see, and because they're obviously from last year, they were showing parts of it, but um, with the outro at the very end of the episodes, they basically focus on Bonnie and Kuma. So it's going to be a tearjerker for sure, and I know that's going to be coming up pretty soon.
You're not you're not ready for it, man. Keep some Kleenex right next to you, and have a ticket ready to go to Japan to fight Oda. I'm letting you know this now. Uh, but there was something that I missed. The robot waking up to Luffy, or at least that's what it seemed like. What do you think is going on with that?
Honestly, I didn't even know like what to think. Like it was cool to see, but I don't think I necessarily have any like theories of like what that it all entails. But obviously it's gonna be something big if they had that happen at the very end of an episode.
Yeah, and in the last video I was asking what's different between Luffy going Gear 5 this time and not the first time, cuz he's still on the same island, but it just seems like this time all of a sudden it's it's doing something more to the robot. Or at least that's what it seems like. They're flashing between him, the robot, and everything. But with all that said, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for watching. Go on ahead. Let us know down below how you felt about this episode. If we missed anything, share it with everybody that you know. Once again, click the subscribe, ring the bell, and I was your host, Kyle Tim.